A man's in life-threatening condition, shot by police after officers say he was found attacking a female. Good afternoon. We begin with a violent incident this morning at a condo in Markham.
York Regional Police say they were called for a welfare check ahead of the shooting. The province's police watchdog now launching an investigation. CTV's Rahim Ladhani is live at the scene with the latest. Rahim.
Natalie and Nathan, good afternoon. Both York Regional Police and the province's Special Investigations Unit are on scene this hour. To this investigation. One is the attack police were initially called here for. The second surrounds the circumstances of an officer discharging their firearm. Police were first called to this apartment complex, which is in Unionville, around 4:45 in the morning after a tenant in one of the units called about hearing a dispute inside the building. Now, this complex is on Highway 7, just east of Warden Avenue. When officers arrived on scene, they actually heard noises before they were even inside the building. Once they entered the unit, they witnessed an attack. Take a listen to what police say happened next.
When our officers arrived at the unit, they located a male actively attacking a female. At least one officer discharged a firearm, striking the male. First aid was administered to both parties until paramedics arrived, who then transported them to a trauma center with life-threatening injuries.
We've since learned that officers saw a man attacking a woman with a knife and that the officer fired one shot. The man is currently in critical, life-threatening condition while the woman is stable, recovering from stab wounds. The SIU tells us no one else was in the unit at the time, but they haven't confirmed if this is a case of domestic violence. We've also been speaking with other residents who live here. Have a listen to how they're feeling.
It's kind of scary, actually. We just moved here. We moved here about 2 months ago. Yeah, so it's a little scary.
I heard the incident happen around 4, which is crazy because I was sleeping right upstairs. And just to hear that, it's crazy.
This place is always quiet, and neighbor and everybody is nice. It never happened before, I think.
3 investigators and 3 forensic investigators are on scene right now, and part of their work will be determining the relationship between the 2 individuals. Their names have not been made public. Reporting live, I'm Rahim Ladhani. Natalie, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Rahim. Staying in York Region, police are investigating a shooting that took place this morning in Vaughan just before 10:30. Emergency crews responded to Bathurst Street north of Rutherford Road. They found a 33-year-old man with gunshot wounds. He was listed in non-life-threatening condition as police look for a suspect described as a man in an older model black sedan. Police are calling this an isolated incident, saying there is no immediate risk to the public.
Turning now to London, Ontario, where defense lawyers are resuming their final submissions in the sexual assault trial of 5 former members of Canada's World Junior Hockey team. CTV's Heather Wright's been following the closing arguments this week and joins us live from outside the courtroom. Heather, is the Crown pretty much wrapping up closing arguments today?
No, Nathan. Actually, we're quite behind schedule. The idea was that the Crown was supposed to be wrapping up their closing submissions today. We are still hearing from the 5th and final defense attorney who's giving their closing submissions. Once they wrap up, we expect the Crown to start today, likely go into tomorrow. The defense attorneys will have an opportunity to deliver a quick reply to the final submissions from the Crown once they wrap up, and then this case will be in the hands of the judge.
Wow. So when the judge now takes over, how long will this process take?
So the judge is going to get this case by the end of the week, and we found out yesterday that she has set a date of July 24th when she's going to deliver her verdict. So that's roughly 6 weeks from when things wrap up here in London, and she will have that time to go over all of the evidence delivered over the course of this trial, all of the testimony given. There was about 25 days in court, so she'll be reviewing all that, and of course the closing submissions back here on July 24th, where she will deliver her verdicts.
You know, being there in London, how much are people talking about this trial?
I mean, there's a great deal of interest, as we know, here in London, in Canada, and right around the world. I mean, there's international media in this in the courtroom covering this case, and also an overflow room, because they've had to basically rejig the courtroom to fit all 5 of the accused in this case in desks behind one another. So there's not as much room as there typically is in a courtroom. So there's quite a lot of interest. Obviously, people watching the closing submissions quite closely, but people will also be paying very close attention to the verdict that is delivered 6 weeks from now. All
right, CTV's Heather Wright in London. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, York Regional Police are asking for your help locating the family of an elderly woman found in Vaughan this morning. Transit officers contacted police after spotting this woman around 3:30 in the morning at a bus stop near Highway 7 and Millway Avenue. Police say she appeared disoriented and couldn't provide a home address. She did identify herself as 82-year-old Y. Lai Wong, but police haven't been able to confirm whether that's her real name, where she lives, or where any family members might be. They're asking anyone with information to get in touch as soon as possible.
Here in the city, a motorcyclist is dead after colliding with a bus in Etobicoke last night. The crash happened around 7 p.m. in Rexdale near Kipling Avenue and Steeles Avenue West. A 29-year-old man riding a motorcycle was traveling northbound on Kipling when he fell off his bike and ended up pinned under a bus that was traveling in the same direction. Police say the motorcycle was traveling at a high rate of speed and was carried well over 200 meters from the initial crash site. They also say speed was a factor in this incident.
A loud bang. And my dad came and he's like, the guy was over there and the motorcycle ended up all over here. And I heard like motorcycles like zooming past downtown.
Many months back, if it's the same person, I had spoken to him once and he does those stunts very frequently on this road. I've seen him a couple of times. So I just told him, I said, guy, don't do these things.
No one on the bus was injured. Anyone with further information is asked to contact traffic services. Still ahead on CTV News at noon, Pride Toronto says it has secured new funding after struggling with sponsor withdrawals. The details coming up a little later in the newscast.
And we have more news in a moment, but first, here's a live look at the city this afternoon. A mixture of sun and cloud. Might be the warmest day of the week, so bear that in mind if you've got outdoor plans today. Overall, not a bad-looking day. The air quality is improving. That's important. Lindsay Morrison is here with a look at the current conditions. Lindsay.
Here's the thing, though, Nathan. This afternoon, it looks like the air quality could deteriorate again. We've got some haziness out there, courtesy of course, wildfire smoke in Western Canada. We had improvements yesterday. Just be aware that we're at a 4 for this afternoon on the Air Quality Health Index. Temperatures are warming up. We're in the 20s around the Golden Horseshoe. We're still looking at teen temperatures for some lakeside communities right now. But yes, this does look like it's going to be the hottest day of the week. We're at 23 degrees right now at Pearson Airport. Humidex 26. Not much to show you here on the satellite and radar, but I do want to point out the fact that it is expected to be windy today. We're talking gusts upwards of 50 kilometers per hour. Still, good day to head to the beach. Forecast high 28, feeling like 32 at the height of the day. If only this was going to last. We'll talk about the cool down that's coming. That's ahead in your forecast. For now, Natalie, I'll send it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. Well, the 2026 World Cup kicks off exactly 1 year from today. And joining us live now with the latest on this countdown is CTV's Scott Hurst. Scott, with a year to go, is Toronto ready to host this massive sporting event?
Natalie, in the next year, there's still lots of milestones that'll be hit, still lots of work to be done, and of course, still lots of money to bring this home for Toronto and Vancouver. But today marks the official 1 year kickoff to the FIFA World Cup, with events taking place in Niagara Falls. There's the unveiling of a countdown clock today. Countdown clocks will also be unveiled in Toronto and Vancouver, of course, the two Canadian host cities. Toronto will have 6 games at BMO Field. 7 games will take place at BC Place in Vancouver. So officially, the World Cup kicks off 365 days from now. 1 year from now in Mexico. Then it's 1 year plus a day. The focus will shift to Canada with the first ever men's World Cup match. Team Canada playing on Canadian soil. The finals will take place July 19th at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. Here's more from the Minister of Sport, Neil Lumsden, and Peter Montopoli, the Chief Tournament Officer from the FIFA 2026 Canada operation, on what to expect 1 year from now.
Continually want to be the best to host, train and develop athletes here in Ontario. And the World Cup is going to set that bar even higher. Again, biggest tournament on the planet is going to be here. How good is that? And how lucky are we?
Canada has a big part of the FIFA World Cup. Even though we don't have the most matches, we have a big part of welcoming the world. And this is a symbol today of welcoming the world to Canada.
So along with the buildup of excitement over the next year and the potential for an economic boost, as supporters will tell you, there's a potential GDP benefit for Canada of $1.2 billion with the operations happening in Toronto and Vancouver. But the costs associated to put on the matches and everything that goes along with it are also a considerable concern, as the cost for hosting these 6 matches in Toronto has been pegged at $380 million. The Fed's kicking in just over $100 million. The province has pledged about 97. And in terms of work that needs to be done, Natalie started this by asking, is Toronto ready? Well, there still needs to be thousands of seats added to BMO Field, as well as upgrades to BC Place, too.
And Scott, as you say, there's been so much discussion about the cost leading up to this event and the organization that needs to happen between now and then. When we actually get to that point, though, what are Team Canada's chances of making the World Cup finals? What kind of show can Canadian fans expect here?
Team Canada right now is ranked 30th overall in the world, and they have been on an historic rise over the past couple of years. Of course, qualifying for the last World Cup was quite an achievement, quite an accomplishment. The excitement was muted a little bit after the performance from the last World Cup, but under head coach Jesse Marsh, Team Canada has been on the rise once again over the last several months and year or so as they lead up to the World Cup now, as you say, 1 year away. So ranked 30th has been a great achievement for Team Canada, but of course there are the top teams in the world, incredible talent in Argentina, Spain, France, England, Brazil. The list goes on. So there's a realistic expectation that Canada could potentially get out of the group stage and get to the all-important knockout do-or-die games. And once you get to those matches, then you'll see how you compare against some of those top teams. So it'll be a great show. And there's expectation that Canada could do well. Making it to the final, that might be a tall task, but we'll have to wait and see.
Okay, CTV's Scott Hurst with the 1-year countdown to the FIFA World Cup in Canada. Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Natalie.
Well, with only a couple of weeks to go, Toronto's Pride Festival is facing some financial hurdles ahead of the annual celebration.
We've got an update this morning with the announcement of new sponsors, but organizers are still calling for more funding. CTV's Mike Walker is live with the details. Mike.
Well, Nathan and Natalie, Pride Toronto organizers are revealing today that they are still dealing with a huge funding shortfall after some major corporate sponsors pulled back their support. But amid the financial challenges, organizers also announcing today that a number of new sponsors have recently come forward. Now, Pride Toronto's executive director making a last-minute appeal for financial support this morning as the event continues to face a $900,000 shortfall. Pride Toronto says that is due in part to companies like Nissan, the Home Depot, and Google withdrawing their sponsorships that officials believe are the result of corporate backlash over diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in the U.S. Officials say there will be no noticeable difference with this year's festival, and this morning they also announced new funding from companies including the Ballroom, No Frills, Shoppers Drug Mart, and Union SEIU Healthcare.
The entire festival is just over $5 million. We are currently in a shortfall of close to $900,000. Again, as I said earlier, this is not just as a result of sponsors pulling out and the reduction, but this is also the cost of doing business. For the ones that walked away today, they're going to have to demonstrate that they are ready, they have done their work in order to come back.
We stepped up not only because others have stepped back, but to send a very clear message. The fight for workers' rights is inseparable from the fight for 2S LGBTQIA rights.
The city has already increased funding for this year's Pride, now totaling $350,000. Organizers also calling on both the provincial and federal governments for financial support that they say accounts for less than 1% of the taxable revenue the festival generates every year. Reporting live, I'm Mike Walker. Natalie, back to you.
Thank you, Mike. A new report has been released on the province's economic performance. Ontario's Financial Accountability Officer says the province's GDP increased by 0.6% in the fourth quarter of 2024. That was due to increased household spending, international exports, and residential investment. Recent indicators suggest mostly positive economic results for the first quarter of the year, and that is because of gains in employment, trade, manufacturing, and exports. But those are expected to be offset by significant weakness in the housing market, with both housing starts and resales sharply lower.
In BC, an evacuation alert remains in place for the district of Squamish because of a wildfire. Officials say the 5-hectare blaze poses an imminent threat to people and property. It's threatening neighborhoods and communities about 60 kilometers north of Vancouver. In northern Saskatchewan, evacuation orders are in place in La Ronge and surrounding areas. It'll be lifted, though, tomorrow morning. 7,000 people live there. Evacuees in Manitoba are still sheltering in Winnipeg. About 21,000 have registered with the Red Cross. There are currently 225 active wildfires in Canada.
In the U.S., a federal appeals court decided last night that the Trump administration's global tariffs can remain in effect, at least for now. The decision means the government can continue to collect import taxes while an appeals process continues. The case involves the 10% tariffs imposed on nearly all countries, including Canada. The appeals court says it will expedite proceedings and conduct hearings on July 31st. Today, Trump called the ruling a great and important win for the United States.
An overnight curfew in Los Angeles was lifted at 6 o'clock this morning following protests there and in other American cities. LA officials say at least 24 people were arrested for violating the curfew. But overall, there were fewer clashes between police and demonstrators than on previous nights. The city's seen 5 days of protests since the Trump administration launched a series of immigration raids on Friday. National Guard troops have been deployed to protect federal buildings and ICE agents. But there were signs of Marines that are also being sent. Demonstrations have also sprung up across the country, from Seattle and Austin to Chicago and Washington, D.C.
The UK's Prime Minister will visit Ottawa this weekend before attending the G7 summit in Alberta next week. Keir Starmer will meet with Prime Minister Mark Carney during his visit to the nation's capital on Saturday and Sunday. An itinerary has not been released yet. The visit happens as Canada looks to strengthen ties and security trade with European allies. That was also the focus when two leaders met in London last March. The two-day G7 summit is being held in Kanaskas, Alberta, beginning on Sunday.
So today is looking like the hottest day of the week, and if you like weather that feels like summer, enjoy today because a bit of a change is on the way for the end of the week. Here are today's highs. Toronto could end up being one of the hotter spots in southern Ontario at 28 degrees. That's not quite record territory. We would need to climb above 33 in order for that to be the case. Just want to point out that our sunset time tonight is 1 minute before 9 p.m. And speaking of the sun, it's strong today. We're at an 8 on the UV index, or very high. And I also want to point out that some of that sun today could be muted by some haze. Wildfire smoke has returned. We'll show you what it looks like out there after this break here on CTV News at noon. Stay with us.
All right, let's talk about the weather story. The kids getting ready for school this morning were begging me to wear shorts, and here I was saying, okay, better take a sweater just in case. But it turned out to be pretty nice and warm this morning.
Well, it's important to them because they wait all year to consistently wear their shorts and T-shirts and maybe a baseball cap and sunblock. So finally, it looks like moving forward, they'll be able to do it consistently and not even have to ask.
That's right. This afternoon for sure. I think shorts, T-shirts, sunblock, and bottled water, all a very good idea. It's going to be hot and humid. In the next couple of days, I don't know, we might need those sweaters again, maybe a little bit of a light jacket. It's not exactly going to feel like mid-June by the end of this week and beginning of the weekend. But let's first talk about today, because if for anyone who enjoys summertime heat, this afternoon is for you. Weather is brought to you by the Presler Law Firm Injury Lawyers. You don't pay unless they win. It was a sunny start to the day, but look at that. Once again, we do have our beautiful city skyline less visible today thanks to some wildfire haze that has returned once again. We got a little bit of a break yesterday and even somewhat the day before that, but the air quality looks to deteriorate a little bit as we move through this afternoon. Here's a look at the drifting smoke forecast. So today is one of the worst days. I do see some improvement as we head into the weekend, so there's some good news there. But as mentioned, this is going to be an ongoing story really throughout this summer. We're at a 4 today on the Air Quality Health Index. That's up from a 3 yesterday. And we're now into moderate risk territory. So if you do suffer from any respiratory illnesses, this might be a day to spend a little extra time indoors as opposed to outside in the heat and humidity. Speaking of, it is already feeling like 30 in the Windsor area. It feels like 26 in Toronto. A little cooler right now in Kingston at 17 degrees, but we are going to warm up today. Forecast high 28, humidex 32, and it's looking like a good night for evening sports. Of course, it is still going to be hot and humid through the very least the early evening, probably the late evening too, but we will see the temperature start to fall, and it looks as though we're going to remain dry. We'll talk about that a little more in just a moment. Tonight's forecast overnight low 15 degrees. Let's talk about the winds. They are expected to be quite gusty today. In some areas, we're talking gusts to about 70 kilometers per hour. They are predominantly coming from a southwesterly direction, so that's ushering in a lot of the warmer air. Heading into tonight, though, we're going to switch to a northwesterly flow, and that contributes to our cool down, which starts tomorrow, and then we feel it even more so for Friday and into Saturday. Current look at the satellite and radar. If you're joining us from around the Bruce Peninsula, southern Georgian Bay, you're seeing a little more in the way of cloud, but it's pretty clear around the GTA. As mentioned, I do expect that in many areas this afternoon, we will remain dry. Slight chance of a shower in some locations. You can see those little spotty specks of green there. Into tomorrow morning, a better chance of us maybe needing the umbrella first thing as we are heading out the door, but then we're going to get into some clearing. So your Thursday afternoon, not looking bad at all. We do return to seasonal. Like I said, northwest winds this time. It is going to be a little bit cooler. And then Friday, chilly, cloudy, chance of wet weather, especially late in the day. And then that chance of showers is going to follow us into the start of the weekend. So waking up on Saturday, periods of wet weather. Look at that high on Friday. We might only make it to about 17 degrees. That would be more than 10 degrees cooler than what we are expected to experience today. Happy to share that improvements come through the weekend. Saturday, yes, a bit unsettled and cool. And then there's Sunday, Father's Day, 22 degrees with a mix of sun and cloud. Looks like a bit of heat will build through the middle part of next week. That's the forecast for now. Natalie, over to you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Registration is now open to all Toronto residents hoping to sign up for city-run summer recreation programs. After opening up bookings to older adults and then Etobicoke, York and Toronto East York this week, today residents of North York and Scarborough got the chance to register. The city offers programs in swimming, fitness, arts and several other hobbies and interests. Some programs may already be fully booked but still have wait lists. You can find full details on how to register on the city's website.
Navigating the connections between nature and humanity is the theme behind the Diversified Life, a visual journey through cultures photo exhibit at Assembly Hall in Etobicoke. And that's where we find our Jessica Smith. Well, this sounds good, Jessica.
Honestly, Nathan, you can go on a trip around the world without ever leaving Etobicoke, and it is really cool because there are scenes from right here in the city of Toronto all the way to Osaka. It's pretty cool. I'm here joined by Debbie and Casey. Debbie is Casey's wife and interpreter, but I want to ask about what inspired the photo journey in the first place, because I see scenes that are from my own neighborhood. I see scenes from parts of the world I can only dream of visiting. So what inspired Casey to start this journey?
有啲咩鼓勵你開始影啲相？
因為我以前喺香港，我係聽障人士，咁喺香港好難分享我啲作品俾人大家睇，但係嚟到加拿大之後咧，咁我可以揾到好多機會，揾到政府嘅資源俾我去發示自己嘅藝術。
但係點解會影呢啲相啊？
Are you able to explain it for him?
Yeah. He mentioned about that he's a deaf artist in Hong Kong, but in Hong Kong there's not much resources for him to have his own photo exhibitions. That's why his artwork cannot to be shown to others. Yeah.
And how long did it take to put all of this together? Because I know this must have taken a lot of time.
影咗幾耐？
我影咗8年，因為我係聽唔到嘢，咁我好中意用隻眼去觀察世界，咁好中意去唔同嘅地方揾唔同嘅獨特嘅文化，咁我中意影低個故仔，分享俾大家睇。
It takes him like 8 years. He likes to travel around the world, like in Asia, in the North America, and even in our hometown in Hong Kong. Yeah.
I know it's hard to pick a favorite. Do you have a favorite picture?
有冇最中意嘅相？
有冇最中意嘅相？有啊，就呢張相。因為呢張相我係第一次去旅行，咁佢中意揾去攝影嘅周行，咁中意揾唔同嘅地方去做練習。咁我有一次去咗日本嘅地鐵站，咁影到嗰個人做緊嘢，一邊嘅人去咗旅行，咁就有好大嘅對比。
The photo is taken in Japan. It shows an office worker is working on the train, and it has a big contrast with the ladies travelers. Yeah, it makes him feel like this is the right photo. Yeah.
What's next for you? Obviously, the exhibition is here in the city of Toronto, kind of in Etobicoke, but what's next?
你嘅將來嘅計劃係咩？將來嘅計劃。
想嘅計劃。
你完咗呢個嘅計劃。
佢想繼續發展藝術，咁去周圍去唔同嘅地方揾周圍唔同嘅藝術文化。
Oh, he will keep continue his journey on traveling around the world and keep capturing the photos and the culture around the world.
Well, Debbie and Casey, thank you so much. It's here until tomorrow, and then there's another photo exhibit by another artist beginning as we head in towards June 18th. I'll send things back into the studio.
Thank you, Jess. Also today, crews at Queen's Park officially removed the boards that were covering up the statue of Sir John A. Macdonald outside the Ontario Legislature. They were placed there in 2020 after the statue was covered in paint amid protests over the role Canada's first Prime Minister played in the developing residential school system.
The statue isn't going away. The decision was made. We just need to realize now that it's a part of history that we acknowledge. But we can't change that. What we can change is how we work with and reflect the roles of Indigenous peoples on the grounds of Queen's Park.
Critics say the move will cause pain and anger for Indigenous communities. We'll have more reaction to this story later today on CTV News at 5 and 6 o'clock. You're watching CTV News at noon. Stay with us. An air quality alert may have ended in Toronto, but as wildfires out west continue to burn, conditions here could worsen once again.
And as CTV's health reporter Pauline Chan tells us, it's not just people with lung conditions who need to be concerned.
Not only does Christine Moffat have asthma, so does her cat, Ozzy. And while Ozzy hasn't reported on whether the wildfire smoke has been affecting his breathing, Moffat says she's been taking precautions.
Just over the weekend, I was having to wear like this mask outside as well, just because of the wildfire smoke.
She says unlike the dramatic coughing fits that affect some asthma patients, she's had to learn to recognize more subtle symptoms.
It's all part of something called silent asthma, where I can feel it. You know, I can feel my chest getting really tight and heavy. I might have difficulty talking or I'll be running out of breath.
She makes sure she checks air quality listings every day, and she credits Asthma Canada with providing checklists and other supports to help her prepare for those difficult times.
Wildfire smoke is known to trigger asthma, and it's particularly harmful because it contains fine particulate matter and other pollutants beyond the normal sort of pollution that we breathe every day in the air. That really settles deeply in the lungs.
Upwards of 4.6 million Canadians suffer from asthma, and it can be fatal.
We do know that around 300 to 350 people every year lose their life directly because of asthma here in Canada.
Asthma Canada recommends you monitor air quality conditions, take your asthma medications as prescribed, and make sure you carry them wherever you go, and avoid outdoor activities where possible. And in fact, the latest research shows it's not just people with respiratory conditions that should be cautious about wildfire smoke. There's evidence those tiny particles, 1/40th the width of a human hair, can cross the blood-brain barrier.
And that's causing inflammation. And then that is, we think, leading to these issues of increased risk for dementia.
Researchers point out it's not just forests that burn in wildfires. Houses and vehicles are also destroyed, and that can release other harmful toxins into the air. Pauline Chan, CTV News.
Seniors often choose to downsize and move to a smaller home, but many are now choosing to stay put. CTV's Adrian Gabriel examines why.
Yes, hello.
Effie Panagiotopoulos's parents have spent the last 5 years coming to terms with their new reality.
My mom was diagnosed with dementia.
Jim and Anna Panagiotopoulos built this 4-story bedroom home in Toronto's East End in 1988. Now in their 80s, their staircase has become problematic. They've had to pay for a lift to be installed. Sky-high real estate prices and their own cost of living has made downsizing feel out of reach.
They many times need to make that move, but they're looking at all the costs involved.
It is great pleasure for me to be here. And
In March, the Carney government announced the elimination of the GST for first-time home buyers on properties under $1 million.
If a senior wants to downsize, move into a new condo, they are assessed GST. Here in Ontario, they're assessed PST.
This report, issued this month by the Missing Middle Initiative, is calling on Ottawa's GST rebate to be offered up to all, including seniors who are purchasing owner-occupied homes, and calling on provincial governments to match the rebate with incentives of their own.
That would shave up to 13%.
In an email, an official with Canada's Department of Finance wrote to CTV News that this GST rebate is intended to help first-time homebuyers enter the housing market rather than people who already own a home.
Ironically, one of the best ways to help first-time homebuyers is to actually help seniors and help them downsize.
For Panagiotopoulos, who also works as a real estate agent, without a senior's tax break for her parents, given their current situation, a move simply wouldn't make sense.
And sometimes it doesn't add up.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't add up. Pay all those expenses to make a move now from a 2-story to a bungalow. I mean, the gap is not that big. So where do they go?
The Canadian Centre for Economic Analysis estimates that here in Ontario alone, there's 4.4 million rooms sitting empty in part because of seniors who won't, or in some cases, can't afford to downsize. Adrian Gabriel, CTV News, Toronto.
Fresh off its premiere at the Cannes Film Festival, the official trailer is out for what's being billed as a contemporary Western about the fairly recent past.
I am recording this. Fair warning. Is that really necessary?
Eddington is set in the middle of the COVID-19 lockdown in 2020. Joaquin Phoenix plays a New Mexico sheriff who channels his frustration about the restrictions into a run against his small town's mayor, played by Pedro Pascal. Now, the cast also includes familiar faces like Emma Stone and Austin Butler. The movie hits theaters July 18th.
With the 78th annual Tony Awards now handed out, some Broadway productions that didn't score big are making some difficult decisions.
You say something is taboo, well, that's the thing I want to do.
TV to stage musical Smash will be closing on June 22nd after fewer than 100 regular performances at New York's Imperial Theatre. Variety reports it is the first production to issue its closing notice post-Tonys. It's typical practice for shows to take that step if they leave the awards show empty-handed.
Comedian John Mulaney is adding more shows to his upcoming tour.
Are these things real? They don't sound real.
While he's been hosting a live talk show for Netflix recently, Mulaney's also gearing up to go across North America on his Mr. Whatever tour. That includes several sold-out shows in Toronto on September 4th and 5th. Today, he confirmed plans for a 4th show in the city on September 3rd. Tickets go on sale to the public on Friday.
Still to come, a bank investigator scam is making the rounds, costing victims thousands of dollars. We have advice on what to look out for after the break. It
was a good start to the year for Dollarama. Now, the retailer says it beat quarterly sales and profit estimates in the quarter ending May 4th. It did that with net sales of $1.52 billion, slightly higher than what was forecast. Analysts say those results reflect ongoing economic uncertainty. They link the boosted sales to consumer interest in discounted alternatives for household goods and grocery supplies.
Despite economic uncertainty, new figures show video game fans were willing to shell out for Nintendo's newest console. The successor to the Nintendo Switch hit shelves on June 5th. Now the video game company is out with the first hard figures on how many were sold. Officials say 3.5 million units were purchased worldwide within the first 4 days of sales. That makes the Switch 2 Nintendo's best console debut to date. The console retails around $630 Canadian before tax. Well, it is a scam that has been around for many years, but criminals are once again impersonating bank employees to try to clean out your account.
You may get a call saying your money's in danger and you need to move it to protect it, but if you do, you could end up losing everything. CTV's Pat Foran has this consumer alert.
I was nervous and scared and worried that, I was actually at risk.
Kristen Ernest of London got a call from someone claiming to be with her bank. She was told funds from her account were being used in drug trafficking and money laundering, and she needed to act fast.
He said, any bank accounts that you have are at risk. You need to follow my instructions during this call to secure your funds.
Ernest was scammed out of $13,500.
It was just very upsetting to know that all the money that I had in the bank was gone.
The scammer told me you have to do online banking and we have to fix the problem.
Raquel Panetta of Toronto also got a call from someone claiming to be with her bank. She followed their instructions and was scammed out of $9,000.
$9,000 is a big money for me because I'm only a cleaning lady here in Toronto.
They knew my home address, they knew my full name, they knew my date of birth, they knew my email, obviously they knew my phone number.
Petra Shim of Port Hope also got a call from someone who claimed her money was in jeopardy. She cooperated, and within 10 hours, her accounts were emptied of $45,000.
They have told me that they will not be reimbursing me because they feel that I approved these transactions.
The Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre says criminals are spoofing phone numbers, so it appears it's your bank calling.
It's a scam that can drag on for days sometimes, where the victim thinks that they're really helping with the inside job is what suspects claim.
To avoid this scam, never share your banking information such as usernames, passcodes, or account numbers. Banks will never ask you to participate in undercover operations, ask you to lie, keep a secret, or investigate bank employees. All three victims feel banks must do more to prevent this type of fraud.
I think there needs to be more accountability from these very large banks, the top 5.
And that was CTV's Pat Foran. A Waterloo recycling program is creating something sustainable out of chopsticks. They're repurposing them to be transformed into furniture and accessories.
CTV's Karis Mapp explains how much waste the initiative is keeping out of landfills.
From eating with them to eating on them. A recycling program is finding new life for chopsticks by converting them into furniture and other accessories, creating a greener future one meal at a time.
1/3 of the world uses chopsticks every day, with 80 billion chopsticks being produced in China alone. We're only using them for 20 to 30 minutes and throwing them straight to the landfill.
A pair of collection boxes have been installed at the food court of a student housing building on Leicester Street in Waterloo, owned by Asset Maintenance Pros.
I didn't think it would take off as much as it has, but our residents are really engaging with this sustainability program.
There's a lot of international students, there's a growing East Asian population, and with that comes a lot of demand for more cuisine that uses chopsticks as the utensil.
Since the launch in fall 2024, over 13,000 chopsticks have been collected, repurposing 42 kilograms of waste and up to 674 kilograms of carbon dioxide emissions reduced. Once the chopsticks are placed in the bin, they're then taken to a manufacturer in Niagara Falls and then transformed into a variety of items, including coasters, just like this one.
We have a system of microfactories across the world, and then any orders that are put through our system are then shipped directly from the closest microfactory to your address. And that way we're able to cut emissions.
At the microfactory, the chopsticks are made food safe, dried, and transformed into uniform tiles to be used for future projects.
They already are a sturdy material, bamboo in general, so it's really easy for them to reprocess, remanufacture, and make them into sustainable furnishings that everybody can enjoy.
Anyone can purchase the bamboo products at chopvalue.com. meaning your chopsticks can find new life while helping create a greener world. Karis Mapp, CTV News, Kitchener.
Canada emerged victorious at the inaugural Canadian Shield tournament. Despite losing to African champion Ivory Coast 5-4 in a penalty shootout after a scoreless draw in regulation time, the Canadian men finished with 4 points, 1 ahead of New Zealand and Ukraine, and 2 ahead of Ivory Coast. Canada heads to the CONCACAF Gold Cup next, opening against Honduras on June 17th in Vancouver.
The Blue Jays were looking for a second straight win when they continued their series with the St. Louis Cardinals last night.
This is a well-hit ball, right center field. And it is gone!
The Jays took a 4-run lead with a homer in the 7th inning and managed to hang on for a 10-9 victory. The teams will wrap up their series this afternoon. First pitch is at 2:15. Toronto's own Summer McIntosh is making big waves and stealing headlines around the globe.
The Canadian swimming superstar broke 2 world records in just 3 days. CTV's Jean Venevali Rao on her stunning run.
Here she comes. Summer McIntosh has broken records before, but this really was a moment to savor, ending a 200-meter medley faster than any woman on the planet.
It is! She destroys it again! The first woman ever under 2:06 in the 200-meter individual medley.
And afterwards, rather humble about it.
Overall, really happy with that time and always just trying to keep pushing forward.
Under 30 seconds.
It wasn't the first time the crowd was on their feet at the Canadian swimming trials in Greater Victoria. On Saturday, McIntosh smashing another world record in the 400-meter freestyle.
World record again!
I just feel like I'm witnessing history, which is pretty awesome.
McIntosh, who's now 18, has been crushing it at the trials. Also breaking her own Canadian record in the 800-meter freestyle. It's been a joy to watch.
Some, groundbreaking performances. You can't say, any less than that deserves the headlines and the plaudits that she's getting.
This all comes after a spectacular Olympics for McIntosh last summer, winning 3 gold medals and a silver. While swimming's long been popular in Canada, there's no question McIntosh's success is giving the sport a boost.
She's become a household name, which means swimming is now in households. People are talking about swimming. Young children are coming along in the stands with posters of Summer.
When I see it, I feel motivated to break my own personal records. So I feel like that's really important to me that I get to see that.
As for those records in Victoria, McIntosh says they'll give her a boost in confidence going into the World Championships in Singapore, which begin later next month. John Venevali Rao, CTV News.
We have some breaking news this hour. CTV News can confirm talks for an economic and security deal between the U.S. and Canada have intensified in recent weeks. A framework for such an arrangement is trading hands between the two parties. Sources who spoke on the condition of anonymity all cautioned the finalizing of such a deal requires sign-off directly from U.S. President Donald Trump, and there are no explicit assurances that that will happen on a certain timeline.
Well, in life, things rarely go exactly as planned.
And that is the premise behind a new film shot in Toronto called Box Cutter. CTV's Andrea Case has more.
This is how the industry works. You gotta pay your dues.
Ashton James is the star of a new Canadian film called Box Cutter. He takes the role of leading man very seriously in something he's still figuring out what it means.
I think it's showing up for everyone else and wanting to be present so that they all feel comfortable. When I was in that position in my career where I was only in it for 2 seconds or 2 moments, the people who were the leads always made me feel really special and made me feel like I was in creation with them.
Box Cutter is about a young factory worker and aspiring rapper named Rome, who one day has the opportunity of a lifetime to get his music to a successful producer. Only problem is, he lost all his music when his laptop was stolen. We follow him as he tries to get it back and get his life on track. The St. Lucia native also stars in the upcoming series Youngblood, a remake of the 1986 film, and he's had roles in The Boys.
He's got the best superpower of all. He could be anyone he wanted to.
And short films, but acting wasn't what he thought he would do.
So my grandmother's an actor, and I think from young I probably had that bug, but when I came to Toronto, I decided to play basketball to fit in with everyone else, and I eventually found my way back to it. And I think when I accepted and allowed myself to say that I was going to be an actor was probably in 2019. I was at a program called CFC at the Canadian Film Center, and that really allowed me to say it for myself and similar to Rome, not look for validation.
With themes of gentrification, friendship, and finding oneself, Box Cutter was lovingly shot in Toronto.
Toronto, in so many ways, is always a backdrop to all these different cities. And in our story, it's not Chicago, it's not New York, it's Toronto in all its glory and all its struggles. It's Toronto for what it is.
Box Cutter opens on Friday at Morningside and Scotiabank Theatres.
At least I tried.
Andrea Case, CTV News.
All right. Shout out to the director of that movie, Reza. I used to work with him back in the day. I want to see that movie. It looks good.
Fantastic. It looks fantastic. Thanks to Andrea for giving us a little preview there.
And I think depending on your perspective, the weather looks pretty fantastic today too. We're keeping an eye on temperatures. We are on our way. It's going to be a bit of a hot day today. Still though, not overly hot right now. Here's a current look at where we stand. 23 degrees, feeling like 26. Tonight we're going to drop to a low of 15. Tomorrow's high a lot more seasonal, 23. And then there's one more look at the 7-day forecast. Nathan and Natalie.
All right. Thank you, Lindsay. And that is CTV News at noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Lindsay Morrison and all of us here at CTV News, thank you for watching. I'm Natalie Johnson.
And I'm Nathan Downer. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6. Have a great day.